I had the wonderful privilege of sitting down with Henry Braun. Many of you that are familiar with him over the last 7 or 8 or 10, 14 years will know him from Mexico, not so much from Canada. But he was born and raised here, and I knew him somewhat through my teenage years and into my early 20s, knew some of his brothers a little bit, and went in some of the same circles. And then he spent 14 years in Mexico, which threw us all for the loop. Nobody knew what was going on, why he chose to go in that direction. But in this story today, you'll hear all of that. First of all, you hear how he came to faith, his love and passion for music, and his acceptance of the gospel and of God's control and authority. And one theme you'll get over and over and over again is the things that he was trying to refuse to do was often where God directed him. So I think many of you will learn a lot from this conversation, learn a lot from Henry Braun, and he's got a lot to offer. So I hope you tune in and listen right through to the end. There's a lot, even at the end, that he has to share, and a study or a teaching that he has coming up shortly. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing these videos, and I appreciate you guys all tuning in. God bless you. So we chatted the other day for several hours, and I kind of got to know a bit more of your backstory. I knew you a little bit from seeing you back in the day. I knew your brothers a little bit more than you, and I knew that you were in a band with Pete Simons, things like that. But that was kind of as much as I knew about you until all of a sudden I heard you got like radically saved, and then next thing I knew you're off in Mexico, and before I knew it, you were preaching from my perspective.
Yeah.
Then I found out you'd been there for like 10 years. I'm like, what? I thought you just left like a few years ago. So.
Yeah. 14 now altogether. So
14 years that you were in Mexico.
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Yeah. Sometimes I tell people that now coming back too, I feel like Jacob. He was also gone for 14 years, right? And so I left alone. Jacob left alone, right? Thinking of the Bible. He left into the other land, and then, midway through his time there, that he ended up getting married. It's a little troublesome. He got 2 wives out of the deal.
That's right.
I only got 1.
Took him 14 years.
Yeah. But then after 14 years, 14 years, then back here, just like Jacob, back to where he started and back to where I started. Yeah. So,
but you came back to find your wife here.
Yeah. So my wife was from here. Yeah. So I left alone. I had known her a little bit during my time here from when I was a Christian, from in the youth. But yeah, I went to Mexico, and then through those years here and there, kept contact. And
interestingly enough, your wife and I were next door neighbors growing up.
Yeah,
so
that's
we
right.
knew each other fairly well. I mean, I knew her older sisters a bit better.
So it's like we're almost family.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You don't have to be your French,
Yeah.
So growing up, you were born and raised in Mexico, or were you born and raised here?
No, born and raised in Canada. Born in Sarnia, actually, but most of my life have lived exactly where my parents live right now, in between Eden and Stratfordville.
Yep. I remember coming there a few times.
Yeah, so it's most of my life there, yeah.
I see. Old Colony?
Yeah, it would have been Old Colony a long time ago, yeah. I wouldn't have really known very much about Old Colony when I would go. I mean, there was Sunday school sometimes too, and sometimes I would be in church. And honestly, maybe it sounds kind of funny, but the only thing I really remember from going to church a long time ago when I was small, I wouldn't have been in church very often, but I remember sitting there and I couldn't understand what was going on either. But one thing was catching flies. It sounds kind of funny. Yeah, that's what I was doing. I couldn't understand anything. I was sitting there or whatever, and then just catching flies that would come. Yeah. And that was kind of my experience. And I mean, I guess kind of just knowing when the service would end, or depending, how you pray or when you pray, kind of that's, I know, okay, now we're probably getting closer to the end. Yep. But yeah, so I was small. I didn't really know much of anything. And
your parents were regular church attenders though?
No, they wouldn't have been regular church attenders.
Oh, okay.
I'm not even sure how often they would have gone.
I remember as a little boy, like before Sunday school, I must have been 3 or 4 years old. For some reason, I have pretty vivid memories of sleeping underneath the bench. If I got really tired, my dad would let me just lay down.
Okay, just under there.
I would sleep. And then Sunday school started, and then I didn't go to church until I was probably 12 or 13.
Okay.
And then started coming back to church services. But,
okay.
Yeah. So you have some consciousness or memories of church and all that, but it was just kind of a place to sit quiet and catch flies.
Yeah, I don't really remember very much. I do remember some of the Sunday school. I do remember one of the Sunday school teachers. It was Mrs. Redicop at the time, and so that I remember. I really enjoyed Sunday school some of the times, and I just remember Mrs. Redicop. And And apparently my mom was actually a Sunday school teacher as well. And I just found this out the other day. And I hadn't remembered that
I see.
until somebody else reminded me.
Yeah.
And then I asked her, is that true? And she's like, yeah, I was a Sunday school teacher. Oh.
You must have been fairly regular.
Yes, and sometimes. So I'm not really sure how often it would have been. But I don't remember it being a regular thing anyway.
Well, I was going to, somebody was asking the other day your age. I think you're close to my age. Were you born 80, 82, somewhere in
84.
That 84.
Yeah,
so you're 2 years younger.
Yeah, so I'm 39.
Yeah. Okay, 40 next year.
Yeah.
Or this year, yeah.
Yeah, this year, yeah. Okay. October.
Yeah.
You're getting closer.
I see. So in all of that, like a lot of people go through the motions. They're just religious like their parents were. They just do what they do. But then there's some kids that have like a super God consciousness from pretty young on, where it's not just a religion to them. They think, okay, there's a God behind this whole system. Was that more your thing, or were you just kind of indifferent to the existence of God?
I don't know if it would have been my thing. So thinking of the old colony as well. So in public school, or for public school, I went to Eden and Strathville School. That's from grade 1 to 8. And then after that, though, I was 3 years in the old colony school in Elmer on Dingle Street there, the old colony school there. And so it was more biblically based there as well, right? We learned through
CLE
Light,
or CLP?
Christian Light, Christian Light. So that was biblical based, and some of the teachers were Christians there. And I think I liked that school more than I ever liked public school that I was in.
Okay.
I think I enjoyed that a lot more overall. So that was good. So that was in the basement of the old colony church. It was there, and I remember some good teachers. Actually, shout out to Tina Bergen. Actually, Tina Good now.
Yep, she's come up quite a few times in these stories.
Haven't seen her in many years, but she was one of my teachers. I think for 2 years that she was my teacher. Yeah, I think so. And to be honest, you know what? She's been my favorite teacher going to school. Yeah, good time. Really liked it.
She knew the gospel.
Yeah, and so I really liked it. I liked that part. I wasn't a Christian then. I didn't care. I mean, we were learning the Bible. It was part of the curriculum. That was good. But overall, it was a good teacher and I thought good atmosphere. So that was a positive. So there was Christian influence there as well. And I didn't understand a lot of stuff there, like things I was reading, or I remember one thing a long time ago, what I thought about baptism, and just to give you an idea of like how I didn't get it. So thinking about baptism, and you have the idea of infants getting baptized, right? And, is that right or was it wrong? And I don't know if I answered a question at school one time, or maybe it was just somewhere else that I wrote something. But it was either at school or somewhere else. But the question came up about why infant baptism would be wrong. And this is one thing I remember. And wherever it was that I wrote this, I remember writing something along the lines of, well, because baptism is kind of like a second chance at life.
Okay.
Right? And if you get baptized when you're a baby, it's like you're taking away somebody's second chance. So that's what I remember. So just thinking back on that, I now knowing everything that I know now, like I could see kind of where I maybe would have gotten some of those ideas.
Yeah.
But how completely misled I was. So now I'm thinking, okay, babies will never have a second chance, and so we're taking away their second chance. Kind of just taking Jesus out of the picture. Yeah. Right. And so,
because Mennonites made such a big deal about water baptism that it was like, that's the time when you have to make everything right.
Yeah.
And so if you did that as a baby, then there's your chance. But then Anabaptists historically rebaptized people who were baptized as infants.
That's what it means, right? Anabaptism, baptized again. Yeah. So that's just what I remember. So during those years, there would have been some biblical formation happening in me, right? So I do know some things. I just didn't get it all. But during that time, obviously, there would have been a lot of things, I think, being planted in me that would later come out. Yeah. Right, I think. And so that would have been there. Yeah.
So as a younger child, maybe like 10 to 12 to 14, that age, you were more or less just living it up, just doing what kids do, not really thinking about God, not going to bed scared or anything like that. It was pretty normal.
Yeah, I don't think I...
Because it's amazing to me sometimes. Some people have like an early God consciousness where they're like at 7 or 8 already. They're just, they know that God's there and they're afraid. And Next guy's like 15, 16 and has never thought seriously yet about existence and eternal life.
Yeah, 10, 12, 14, around that age. I don't think that I would have ever really, it would have been something that really, came onto my mind or onto my heart to really think about it. It would have crossed my mind, I'm sure, but not.
Yeah. Were you pretty studious in school? Like, I know you love learning and studying now.
In school, wouldn't have been so much.
Okay. Similar.
In school, probably my favorite courses, what I would have done best in was probably math. Those were things that I enjoyed more. And what else? I don't know. But things like geography, social studies, things like that. I was always terrible at those things. I never liked it. Especially in public school, I remembered I would always fail. Like I really didn't care. Now I like some of that stuff. We're thinking about history and geography and thinking about
science.
Yeah, biblical context, science. Like it's very interesting to me now. Like I enjoy it now that I'm free to do it and don't have to do it maybe. Yeah. But thinking about biblical context and what's going on and how the world works and history and seeing how things go from one thing to the next. Like it's very interesting to me now. A long time ago, man, I just history, social studies, all that stuff.
I remember when I became a Christian at 21, I started thinking, man, if I could go to school now, because now I want to learn. I want to, even just know stuff, secular stuff. Yeah. But ultimately, I wanted to learn the scriptures. But yeah, interesting. Sometimes that just turns on. I know quite a few people, probably at least a handful or more of men who got saved in their 20s and literally didn't know how to read. And then they started learning to read by reading the Bible. Yeah. And then they wanted to learn. They had this desire and a hunger for it, right? It kind of puts them back quite a bit, right?
Suddenly you have a purpose for learning, right? When you have a purpose for learning, then you actually learn. Yeah. Right? Whereas where there's no desire, there's no growth, right? Or very little growth, I guess you could say. Yeah. Yeah.
So how early did the whole music thing start for you? How soon did you know that you love music?
I still remember the day that I started. How old would I have been? Was I 15? I think I was 15. I don't think I was driving myself yet. I don't think I would have had my beginners, but I still remember the day that I first picked up the guitar. It was maybe it was a Saturday morning. I don't remember which day it was. Maybe it was a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. But regardless, I remember being in my bed, and my brother played guitar at the time. My brother Billy. Yeah. And he had a guitar, an amplifier that he always used, but he had it somewhere else for, I don't know how long was it. Maybe it was a couple of weeks, maybe it was a month or two even. So he didn't have it at home. And then I remember though, while I was in bed one day, he had brought it home. It was early in the morning, and I was downstairs and I was listening to what he was playing upstairs. And he was playing a new riff that he had learned, and I was just downstairs, and it was on the electric guitar. I was downstairs listening to it, and I was like, man, it sounds so good. Oh man, that's so good. I thought to myself, it's amazing. I was just listening to him play that. It was kind of like one riff over and over again. Finally, I decided, you know what, I got to learn how to play that. So I got out of bed, I went upstairs, and I went to him, and I told him, I said, teach me how to play that thing. Now, I'd never played guitar. I didn't know anything. So it was obviously too much for me to learn what he was playing. It wasn't a beginner's thing. But that's what I wanted to learn, like that thing. And so, I mean, he showed me a couple of things, showed me the basics of that one thing he was doing. That's kind of where it got kickstarted. And
did it come pretty natural to you?
Yeah, it probably came a lot more naturally to me than most people.
Yeah. Well, I think of the Simons guys, Pete and Willie both, they picked up the guitar, and then within like a year they were playing and singing, and they were like doing all kinds of riffs. Pete especially loved doing riffs. Yeah. But he compares his guitar playing to yours and says he's nowhere even close. So I've never heard you really play. I mean, besides strumming a acoustic.
Yeah, now I haven't played very much in a very long time. But back then I did pick up fairly quickly. It was mainly electric guitar that I did then. I was more of a lead guitarist, and so I really liked it. But it was one of those things again. I liked it so much, and so I really, really tried. Yeah. Right, and I would learn and learn and learn, and I would just, if I would get home from if I would get home from school or somewhere or from work, depending on what it was, I would play, right, and it would just constantly be playing, and it was mostly by ear, right. So I really learned to use my ears for playing, and so I really liked it, and so that helped me.
You love music already, just listening to songs and stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it all started, and eventually. Yeah, I mean, Billy was playing some guitar, and then eventually got into contact with Pete Simons as well, who was a good friend of Billy's.
It was mostly like what would you call it? Rock and roll, heavy metal, or what category would that have most?
Yeah, it would have been anything from like punk rock to regular rock to hard and metal and stuff like that. Anything in between there was mainly what it would have
Lots
been.
of distortion and riffs and
that was my thing. Yeah, got to get the solos in there. Yeah, that was my kind of thing. But yeah, that's kind of where it started and developed into eventually, getting together with Pete Simons and my brother, who then had started playing the drums, and then we started playing together different things.
Interesting. I don't know how that part was for you, but sometimes religion brings people to a deep thought process and they start considering God. But sometimes religion just traps people into, they don't have to think about it. Church takes care of the thinking for me. But then sometimes people who are more artistic and creative, music or art or whatever, they start thinking outside of themselves, because what they're creating is something big, right? It's an expression of their heart and their soul, whether it's music or an actual painting or something like that. Did making music make you think more deeply?
What I do know is after a few years of playing music and then thinking about, I started writing my own songs as well, and then so things like relationships start coming in there, and so that definitely played a big role in that. Like a lot of my emotions would come out in my music and then the songs that I was writing, and so it was a lot of that. So it would have been an artistic expression in that sense of my feelings really came out in things I was thinking about, from my good days to my bad days, right? I remember I had written one song after a really bad week that I had, and then I, thinking about that whole bad week, everything that was going wrong. It seemed like sometimes you have times in your life and it feels like everything's going wrong. So this is still before I was a Christian, and then everything was just so messed up. I thought, this went wrong, and this went wrong, and this went wrong, and this went wrong. And so I went into our band shed. We had made a band shed at that time, and I went in there. And then during that day, and I finished writing an entire song right about this bad week, and like guitars and melody lyrics and everything, just putting it out there, right? I had a lot on my heart, a lot on my mind, everything that was going on, and that kind of just came out. And so I would do a lot of that. And I think you find that in general, I mean, relationships are what drive a lot of music. You find it like, what isn't driven by relationships when thinking music, right? There's so much.
So many people can't express what they're feeling or thinking. Whereas musicians tend to, and poets, they have the tendency to be able to take all that chaos in their mind and put it down on a paper, or put it into a song, or put it on a painting, and it expresses their heart and thoughts, right? Where not many people have those kinds of gifts. Those are different gifts that we have. So music is something that I seem to be able to pick up quite a bit easier than I would say most people were able to. And it felt very natural for me to just get going. But you were saying the other day that it definitely became a very obsessive kind of thing, where you just not only practice, but eventually you got into trying to record your own stuff.
I was working on my own CD, and during one year, especially before I became a Christian, actually, and actually where I was, a better person, actually. And anyways, that's part of the story.
So speaking of better person, were you into, like, when you were into that whole music scene, was it also a party lifestyle then, or no?
Yeah, it would have been. I mean, before I was a Christian, I mean, it was, the people that, were part of my group, we were all, maybe it's a Wednesday and, well, time to go out and find where the party's at and go drinking, or if it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And that was kind of the thing to do. Hey, where's everybody gathering? And you didn't have WhatsApp and stuff.
No, exactly.
Back then, right? So it was a matter of just driving around until you found where the party was.
Or you call somebody on the landline, hope they're home.
Yeah, and if you could get them there, right? And I remember back then it was just a matter of, you could phone them, but maybe nobody answers. But then it was just always there was always certain places that people would always be. And then so you just go to a first place. And if they're there, then that's where you stay. And if not there, then you go to the next place. Right, and that's kind of how things happened back then, is what I remember. But it was partying on the weekends, and that was pretty much what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then what was the main driver to try to become good? You said during that period when you were recording and trying to get this CD put out, you were trying to also be good. You had gone to church. You mentioned going to Port Burwell Lighthouse Gospel.
Yeah.
And really enjoying church, but still not really knowing the gospel, right?
Yeah, so it would have been thinking about, from when I started playing music as well so it would have been a number of years. And then, relationship struggles later on when I was around 19 or so. And, your emotions play a big role in there. And at one point starting to think about the gospel more at that time. And then eventually, though, making the decision that, you know what, I don't care anymore. So that's the decision I made.
Don't care what?
I don't care anymore about trying to please God or trying to, go into church. Because there was a point when I was around, I think it would have been around 19. Then I had started going to church a little bit. And I was kind of on the fence of decisions that I was going to make, either, pursue God more or throw it all away, like just forget it. The fence is a really hard place to be, a very tough place to be. And at that point in my life, I was in a very tough spot, it seemed like, as well, because a lot of things going on, right, emotionally and personally for me. And then I just remember, though, like there was a lot of stress at the same time being on that fence, until I even remember the day that it happened, where I made a choice and a lot of stress was gone. And I remember being out on a tobacco field, hoeing in the fields. And what happened then was, finally I decided, after, hearing something, I made a decision. And right there and then I thought, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with, going to church. Like I said, at that time, then I had gone to church a few times here and there. But then I made the decision, you know what? Forget it all. And rather than being on the fence, I jumped on the wrong side. And it was relieving at the very beginning.
Not have to
instantly,
evil, right?
Yeah, this fence is a hard place.
That's part of the problem.
Get that back on there. The fence is a very stressful, difficult place to be.
Yeah.
I jumped off on this side, and stress was gone instantly for me at that moment, right? Thinking, oh, okay, I'm not thinking about having to do what's right anymore. I'm just gonna live. Now I'm just gonna go back to partying and not even think about the rest. And it was a lot easier instantly.
Short term.
That kind of progressed, a couple of years of living that way, making choices, end up causing you a lot of, trouble later on, and a lot of heartache later on. And so it just kind of compiles, in your life. And so, it was stress relief, just to forget about everything for a while and just do whatever I wanted. I didn't care. And then all of that freedom piles up, and you see that in a lot of people. All their freedom and sin kind of piles up until, well, they end up in a bad...
They do seem to spend some years or months or whatever of just being like, it doesn't bother them, their conscience is clear, they don't care, and just living life, right?
Just going to do whatever. Up. Yeah, and then, a lot of that stuff just piles onto your mind.
So around 19, that's what was going on.
Yeah, and then, going till about 22 years old.
Okay.
Somewhere around there. And then at around 22, I think it would have been, was it New Year's? Going from 22 years old, or 22 years old, maybe. Probably, yeah, it would have been, I think. 22 years old, and then New Year's. And then right after a party that I had thrown, that I was at the place where I was living with a couple of other guys, and thinking up that, I think the party was Saturday, evening, all night or whatever, and then Sunday morning, waking up, and that Sunday morning decided I wanted to change. I wanted to do something else. Like that day there.
The big time of your life, the thing you had set up to be so much fun just wasn't fulfilling.
Yeah, there was something else, and that's, I think it would have been a Sunday morning, but now I can't even remember when it was. But right around New Year's anyway. And right after throwing a party, and then that morning after, wanting something else.
Okay.
And wanting to be a better person, which is good.
Yeah.
Wanting to stop drinking now, right? Wanting to stop partying, wanting to stop all this stuff, and that was all good. And we talked about earlier, this idea of, artists bringing things out, through their medium, whether it's art or whether it's music or whatever it would be. And actually that very day when I had decided that, the first thing that came out was a song and actually a very nice song, that I still know today. It's a very, very good song actually. And it came out right then. So it was good, but right away that came out. And so I started writing another song that day. But so that's when I started being a better person.
Yeah.
Which is good. And from then on, like I didn't drink so much anymore. Occasionally I might have had a beer, maybe 1 or 2 beers a month, maybe, or something.
But it wasn't a bad habit.
No, and I wasn't partying, and it would have been then that I went to, maybe I stopped by a party somewhere. I knew there was a bunch of people somewhere, and I stopped there just to say hi, because there's everybody I knew, everything I knew was there, right? And so I would just stop by just to say hi to people, but then generally not stay and then leave again. And that's what I did, and try to be a better person, and maybe not knowing exactly where to do that, because everybody's over there. But so I was a better person. I stopped a lot of things, and at that same time, then my my desire for making music had kind of flared up again. I mean, like, hey, you know what I had been thinking about, making a CD and lots of songs for a number of years, and things that I had put together over the years. You know what? I wanted to finish that. So that was my desire through that coming year. Like, hey, I want to start finishing some of my.
Because it's a lot of work, even just to fully record a song. Like, to have all the different parts and all the tracks laid out, and
it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
But that's what I wanted, right? I ended up moving back home during that year as well. It helped me also save money during that time, and I was working in siding at the time, and then I started working part-time, siding, just doing some jobs, maybe do a job, and then get some money, and then take time off to do some more recording, and then do another job, get some money, and then take a little bit of time off to do some more recording, right? Because I had my own recording machine, I guess you would call it, that I had, and I had bought myself a really expensive drum kit as well, and a bass guitar and acoustic guitar, electric guitar, everything I had.
You were recording everything yourself then?
Yeah, I was doing everything myself, and then I would go to London to a studio to do a couple of touch-ups as well here and there. But yeah, most of it was just all myself. And so that's what I was doing through the year. And my goal had been then that the following year, I had wanted to finish it by April of the following year. And so that was my goal. So I was working part-time and then recording music, and then working and recording music. And then eventually, I think it must have been around October or something, and thinking to myself that, wow, if in April, the coming April, which was still, about 6 months away, 5 or 6 months away, if I want to have my CD done and everything done by that time, beginning of April, man, I'm really going to have to bring this up a notch. Everything got to go faster. And so I decided that I was going to quit my job completely. So I stopped working completely, anything else. And I was just going to 100% work on my music. And I had credit cards that I could use. So I was just going to use my credit cards. And I figured everything out. By the time I was done, my credit cards would be full. I had everything worked out exactly. Then by end of March, my credit cards would be empty, right? Or full. Maybe that's the better way to say it. My credit cards would be full. And then by that time, though, the way I worked it out should be exactly when I would be finished my CD. And so it worked out perfectly. And then after that, I wanted to start, promoting my music, or start working more with my music, and see what would happen, right? Just go more that direction, make music, and, that would be my life. That would be my work and everything I would do. And so everything worked out exactly as I had imagined. Everything worked out exactly like I had planned, except for a minor detail.
You were still trying to be good, right?
Yeah, I was still trying to be good. I was being good, and my music had changed during that year. So during that year, my music was kind of a mishmash of things. There was some of the stuff that I had written from in the past, relationship stuff, and also this really bad day that I had, and so there was some of that I was developing, but there was also some newer songs that I was making now about God, right? So it was kind of a mixture of things. So I was singing about God, I was singing about relationships, I was singing about a bad day I had way back in the day, just a song that I had written back in the day. And so it was a mixture of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Still in that same genre.
Yeah, it would have been. So it was. I had a couple of acoustic songs that I had as well in there, and but it was a lot of maybe punk rock style and a couple that were a little bit heavier. But so it was a mixture of a lot of different things, and but yeah, so that's what I was developing, and yeah, all the while being a good person, and everything worked out like I had thought. Beginning of March or middle of March sometime, I was working on my last couple of songs that I had. I think I might have had like 11 or 12 songs that I was planning on putting out. And I was working on the last two, I think. And by my calculations, then in about 2 weeks, then those were supposed to be finished.
Credit cards were almost full.
Yeah, credit cards were just about maxed out, and I thought, it's perfect. This is exactly what I had planned. And then everything changed, and I didn't put out the CD. Everything changed right at that time. When I had worked out everything that I thought I was going to do for my future, and everything was working out exactly as I had planned, then I guess you could say God really started coming into the picture and everything changed.
Would you say that music and your drive for that was basically a functioning God to you, like an idol almost?
I guess it could have been, yeah.
But you were talking about God, so you had a separation. It's not like you worshipped your music, but... Yeah,
like I was, during that year, I had started going to church again, right? And I really enjoyed going to church, right? And while being a better person, I had been going to church again, and I really liked hearing the gospel. I really liked hearing what the pastor would say, right? I really was interested in what was going on, and I really desired to learn those things. But at the same time, like during that whole year of being a better person, I couldn't sleep. Like, and it's interesting, before trying to be a better person, then, sleeping was fine. And now trying to be a better person, starting to go to church, and, having fellowship with people that are Christians, and I can't sleep anymore. Yeah. Like being up at night, and that was my struggle during that year.
Coming under conviction, kind of coming under the law, trying to be good and right, and there's more to analyze and worry about.
Yeah, like what was happening now to me was I would be up at night, late at night, and my mind would just be like, there would be this battle in there, thinking about everything I did, everything, all the sin that I had been doing, all this that I had done, and why did you do that, Henry? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? And why did you do that? Just constantly, and being up all night, to 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and can't sleep because it's just spinning, right? It's just spinning and spinning and spinning over and over again, and punching my pillow and sometimes crying in the middle of the night because it just kept being there, right? And so that was my struggle while being a better person.
Yeah.
And it was like that throughout the whole year. But yeah, so I was going to church. I was earnestly studying and reading things, and towards the end of that year, I had I was even thinking, it would be nice to have a nice Bible study with a group of friends that I would that I used to party with, some family and friends that we used to do other stuff with, and a bunch of them had been Christians already. And I thought about, wow, that would be nice, to get together with some of those people, and hey, they're Christians, and maybe you could say, and I wanted to be a Christian.
Yeah.
How about a nice Bible study together, right? And so I started asking around about things like that, and seemed like there was interest in a number of people that Bible study would be good, getting to the end of the year, but there was nobody who I guess was stepping up to say, hey, you know what, and I would lead it, or somebody that would lead the Bible study, and maybe busy doing a lot of other things, and I don't know, maybe they were busy in other studies as well, but I found that there was interest, but there was nobody to lead it. And then so at the end of the year, then I decided that of that year, you know what, I'll lead it. Yeah,
there you go.
I'm going to lead a Bible study. So I wasn't a Christian. Maybe I was a pretending one. But I decided, you know what, in the new year, I'm going to start leading the Bible study. And I asked those people, and yeah, they wanted to come. So we'd have a small group of people. And I remember we had a great time. Had a great time, just personal study there. And I didn't know nothing, but, you know, I remember the first time when you know, I brought it out. I think I might have had a couple of verses that I read somewhere or something, and we talked about that, and
Yep.
and it was amazing. I thought it was amazing anyway.
It felt insightful and spiritual.
Yeah, I thought, wow, this is great. And then I just did that, you know, for the next while. And I think that is what led me eventually to becoming a Christian, to giving my life completely over. I did have a desire.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to know the truth. I was being held back by something. And I even remember telling somebody once, it was during that time when I was also leading the Bible study, or was it right before? I don't know, but right around that time, and somebody brought me home and asked me, can I ask you something? I said, sure. And then he says, are you a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
That's what he asked me. So just me and him in there. And when he asked me that, I really wanted to say yes with a clear conscience and clear heart, and, you know, just to be encouraged and saying yes. But my heart kind of went like this, right? And I wanted to be a Christian, and I wanted it to be true. And I said yes.
Mm-hmm.
I said yes. And he said then, I thought so. I thought so. and I still remember that. And I remember though leaving there. So that was on the property where my parents still live now. It was on that property that he asked me that. But I remember just feeling completely uneasy. I mean, I could see where, you know, people would maybe assume, and, you know, this is why he was asking, because, I mean, I was interested in the Bible. I was really seeking God. I was reading the Bible. I was
Your life
studying,
had changed.
my life was changing in so many ways. Like, I wasn't drinking anymore. I was attending church. I was doing a lot of these things. You know, I had a big desire, and I really wanted it to be true, but something was wrong. And I could feel something was wrong. And I didn't have peace about that answer at all. But I wanted it to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, I guess, how my year went. And occasionally, again and again, you know, the thought would arise, you know, Henry, you shouldn't keep going with your music. Stop.
Mm.
I would always get pushback to that thought.
This is my passion.
Yeah,
this is my future.
Yeah, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want. And I remember even actually, so it's on a Sunday that I gave my life completely to God. But I remember even I think it was the Thursday before that Sunday. So this was when I was, you know, really close to finishing the whole city, right? My dream, what I wanted. And I remember telling my mom and my sister-in-law, they were with me when we went to London. I was working on some music stuff there. And I remember after finishing and talking with them and stuff, and I remember sitting in the car and telling them, it doesn't matter who tells me that I shouldn't be doing this. It doesn't matter who would tell me that I'm doing anything wrong. It doesn't matter who would tell me anything. I'm good at this. This is what I want to do.
Yep.
I can do this, and I'm going to finish it.
Interesting.
I'm good at this, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. There must have been a bunch of controversy around you quitting your job and all that. I remember hearing about it. I'm like, what in the world? He quit his job to do music? What is he, like, what's going on, right? Like, I didn't have that much thought about it, but your personal close relations must have thought, Billy, what's going on?
Or Henry, you mean?
Henry, sorry,
Yeah,
I'm thinking
my brother,
your yeah. Henry, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe
And
that
so
was.
then you're thinking, I don't care who tells me, I'm going to
Yeah.
keep doing this.
And I'm going to prove a point. I'm going to prove the point that I can. That was on my mind. I'm going to prove I can.
Mm-hmm.
I will. I will succeed. And I'm going to do this. Right? You give it, and I've kind of been that kind of a person, I guess, for a long time in a way, that I'm going to do it and I'm going to keep doing it and I'm not going to fail. Sometimes it's led to good results and sometimes it's led to dangerous things. But that was me on a Thursday.
Yep.
And I was right. I was absolutely right. It didn't matter who would say anything about it. It wouldn't matter who would try to convince me about anything. None of that mattered. But then I realized that there was somebody who did have a say.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that on Sunday.
Yeah.
3 days later. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, 3 days later.
Interesting.
God had something to say. And 3 days after, so clearly saying, it doesn't matter who will tell me that I shouldn't or I can't or whatever the case is. 3 days later, I gave everything away.
God's like, hang on. Do I have
Kind of
any
like-
say in your life or not?
It's kind of like the Titanic. Not even God.
It's actually, I'm thinking about that. Not even God could sink this ship.
Nobody can stop me. Well, maybe God can. Because the thing is, it was part of that battle inside. I really was seeking God. That's why I had that Bible study. I really, really.
And that's why you
wanted
had
to.
troubled sleep and all that, right?
Yeah,
your conscience and everything is active and trying to.
Yeah, there was so much involved in there, and so that was my inner struggle. But yeah, I guess the people couldn't say, or nothing anybody would say would change me. But I guess when I finally gave God a chance, He could.
Yeah.
And everything changed. Like,
So you told me already the other day what happened that Sunday morning, but you decided, not really decided, but you just literally couldn't go to church.
yeah. So Sunday morning, the day that everything changed, it had been another night where I had not slept very much at all, and it caused me to be really tired. So Sunday morning, I was always going to church at that time, and I really, really liked it.
Nobody was forcing you.
Nobody was forcing me. Like, I wanted to. Like, I really, really liked it. And I would go with my parents at that time, because I didn't have a vehicle on the road. It was part of saving money, and also part of different things like insurance issues and stuff that happened because I got pulled over for drinking and driving a couple of years prior to that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff happening there. But so I would go to church with my parents, and then that morning, Sunday morning, my mom would come into my room, and she let me know it's morning, and time to get up, go to church if I want to go to church. Or she asked me if I wanted to go to church, and I said, and I wanted to go to church, but I had barely slept again at all that night, and I was really tired. And I said, I don't know. Okay. She goes back upstairs, and then she comes back down a little while later. And then she asks me again, Henry, do you want to go to church? And I really wanted to go to church. I really wanted to get up. It's like I couldn't move. And then I was like so tired and immobile, I guess. And I told her again, I said, I don't know. She said, well, if you want to come, you're gonna have to get up soon and get ready. And then she went upstairs and she came down a third time again. And she said to me, she's like, if you want to come with the church, then you're going to have to get up now because we're leaving. And I was just thinking to myself, like, Henry, get up. Henry, get up. But it's like I couldn't move.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I was, again, it almost felt like an inner battle again. Like I wanted to go. I really wanted to go. It's like, Henry, get up. Get up and go. You can do it. And I couldn't move. And finally I said, I'm not going. And she asked why. I said, I'm tired. So I said, and I was really tired. And she went upstairs and And I remember thinking to myself, Henry, no, you're not that tired. Just get up. Just get up. Go. I didn't move. And I heard them getting out of the house, closing the door, thinking, Henry, my bed was right by, it was in the basement. It was right by a window that, points towards the driveway.
Yep.
It's like, Henry, get up. You're not that tired. Just open the window. Tell them to wait. They're going to wait for you. They're going to wait for you. Just get up and open the window. And I couldn't move. And I heard them pull off the driveway and then drive down the road.
Too late.
That was it. Instantly, I got up. Like, not even, like, not a minute passed. Like, I heard them drive. Boom. I got up. So it was almost like before then I couldn't move. And now, like, instantly I was up. And I wasn't tired in the slightest at all. I went upstairs. And then for about a half hour, I remember sitting on the couch, just wallowing in my self-pity, kind of. I wanted to be at church. I really wanted to be at church. Now my parents were gone. They were my ride to get there. And so after about a half an hour of finally, or just sitting there and just thinking about why, and you go, oh man, I want to go. What do I do now? What do I do now? Finally, I made a decision. I wanted to be in church. I wanted to hear God's word. I decided, you know what? I'm going to have my own church. I'm going to have my own church. That's what I said to myself. I thought, why not? I said, we got a Bible here at home. There was a Bible there that I could use. Okay, here's a Bible. And we even had a computer, and there was internet there. Pretty slow internet at that time, but there was internet there. I could research things if I wanted to look up something. And we could pray to God anywhere, anytime. I thought, there's nothing holding me back. So that's what I decided to do. I grabbed that Bible, I went downstairs into my room, and I started reading. And I started studying. That's what I did. I did it all morning and going into the afternoon, just reading and studying and praying and reading and studying and praying. Just all morning. And I don't know when it would have been in the afternoon, but at some point in the afternoon, then finally, something started knocking on my door. Henry, give up your music. That was a tough one.
Yeah.
There was so much other stuff. I'd given up a lot of stuff. I didn't drink. I didn't party. I wasn't doing bad things. I would go to church. I was even leading a Bible study, right? So much that I was doing. So much, that I desired.
Reminds me of that rich young ruler, right? I've kept all these things from my youth up. What do I lack yet?
Yeah.
Go and sell all that you have, give it to the poor.
Follow me.
No, that's too much.
Follow me. Yeah. And that was the thing. Give it up. That was like the one thing you don't touch, right?
Yeah.
Touch everything, just don't touch that. And but it became clear to me, like,
you
as I was
wrestled with that thought.
Yeah. It's like for years, I had desired, like, I'd been making music and I liked it, right? And I was good at those things. And now after, spending a year of my life and even half a year completely like doing nothing except that and trying to put together a CD now and almost being to the point where that thing is finally done. And now I'm going to stop. Okay, and what about everybody that, that would say, you couldn't make it anyway or something, well, how am I going to prove them wrong now?
I just said I would never give it up and nobody could stop me.
How am I going to prove people wrong? And that was a hard thought, and it's a pride issue. I have to, I will succeed, I will do it. But then God was telling me not to. For me, it was clear. He was telling me not to. Regardless of your viewpoint on music and this and that,
sure.
That's regardless of any of that. God was telling me not to. And I was clear. And it doesn't even matter whether my music was good or bad. That was completely irrelevant at this point. God was telling me not to. So now it's just the question, what am I going to do with that?
Who's my authority?
Yeah. and wanting God, right? Desiring God, studying God's word, leading Bible studies, really wanting it. What am I gonna do with that?
Yeah.
And finally, in my room when I'm thinking about all these things, finally I made the decision, and then I said something to God, and this is what I tell people sometimes. These were my salvation words. It wasn't any prayer that I said. It wasn't any asking of forgiveness. And sometimes I tell people I did everything wrong, but God saved me. My salvation words were this. And then everything changed. I said, God, if you don't want it, it's gone. That was it. I didn't ask for any forgiveness. I didn't ask Jesus to come into my heart. I didn't ask nothing. It's just a matter of God showed me something. He revealed something to me. Something I'd been battling for a long time too. And now he just said to me, Henry, I don't want this for you. I don't want you to do this. And then I just said, and it was, I guess, a matter of humility. And humility is what leads us to salvation, just humbling ourselves before God, right? That's what happens. You humble yourself. And then you say, God, you know what? You're right. You're right. God, whatever you say, doesn't matter what I think, whatever you say, I'm going to do it because you said so.
Yeah.
And that's when everything changed, like in an instant. Everything. As soon as I said that, God, if you don't want it, it's gone. Boom. Everything changed. Immediately. Immediately, my life changed. Like, and I could see it, and I could feel it, and I could notice it. Something happened. Immediately, I started crying, too. Like, that was a result of a lot of things. And I didn't want, so my parents were, I know they were upstairs at the time, so they were home. So it was in the afternoons at that time. I didn't want anybody to see that I was crying, so I went upstairs and I took a shower. And I just, I was processing everything that just happened and everything that was going on and the decision that I had just made and giving everything up. And so I just cried in the shower for a while. And after the shower was done, I went out and I think I went back into my room and continued studying and praying. And so everything changed that moment. And what's really interesting is, among many things that happened after that, the following week, but 2 weeks later, and last time we were discussing, I don't think I mentioned this yet. Maybe I did. But 2 weeks after, I realized something. After, like, from that Sunday to 2 weeks later, I thought back during those 2 weeks since that Sunday, and I realized something had happened. I realized that ever since that Sunday, I had slept every single day. Every single, it was like, it boggled my mind. Like, until then, I was having such a hard time. Like, for that whole year, this battle and my sin and everything. Oh, Henry, why did you do that? 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 And battling that and not being able to sleep. And then starting that Sunday, and every single day afterwards until 2 weeks later when I started thinking back.
Hey, I've been sleeping.
I realized I had slept every single day or every single night. And it was amazing to me. Like, wow. And I could obviously still remember everything that I've done wrong in my life. I've remembered the bad decisions that I've made. All the things that were, giving me sleepless nights and, that was on my mind the whole time. I could still remember all of those things, but it didn't matter anymore. Like,
was there I know now your theological understanding of what takes place when someone gets saved is, Christ does a work and you recognize what he did for you. Was there a real recognition of that at the time? Or was it more just, I know Christianity is true, but I'm kind of resisting it with this music thing. As soon as God says, give it up, then it was like, well, obviously this is what I trust in, right?
So I had been studying the Bible, right? And I had really been studying and searching things. I'm not sure, right now I can't remember exactly how much of my theology would have been like formed at that time. Not very much. I know I didn't know very much. But so I don't know what I would have exactly thought, but I do know one thing that happened instantly, like when I made that decision that Sunday. It had been already for a couple of months, maybe it was already for all of that year already, that I had been thinking during that time about getting baptized. Right? And you know, you believe and you get baptized. And I had thought about that. Again, it was me wanting to be a Christian, kind of like I was telling my one friend, right? And that asked me the question, are you a Christian? You know, and I tell him, yeah, but I know something was wrong. It wasn't from the heart. But going along with that same thing, you know, well, maybe I should get baptized. Maybe, you know, maybe that's what I need. And I had been thinking about, you know, for months prior to that, you know, maybe I need a baptism course. You know, the church would have times you could sign up for baptism courses. Maybe you want to learn more, and that's all good. And I was thinking, maybe I should do that, or, you know, what do I need? What do I need, right? Maybe I need this, maybe I need that. I never did take a baptism course or anything, but there was always this question in my mind about, what do I need to do now? What should I do now? And that Sunday, after making that decision, the interesting thing that happened to me was, you know, in my mind, right away, the thought came. It's like, Henry, you need to get baptized right now, as soon as possible. Like, that was just, there was no question about anything. So maybe that was that my theology speaking?
Right.
But me knowing that now's the time,
and the fact that you could now sleep and rest and your conscience was no longer bothering you. There's something indicating that there was a relief of your sins. You knew that they were now washed away. And
yeah, like prior to that, for months, I had been questioning, like, should I get baptized? Shouldn't I? Do I need some classes, or what do I need to do? And now in this Sunday, though, there was no question about any classes that I needed. There was no question about anything else that I needed. There was no question about getting baptized.
Are you ready to get baptized?
It felt like a command to me right then. Like, Henry, like before it had been a question. Now it was, command, Henry, get baptized right now. Like, that was just in my mind, in my heart. Like, I have to get baptized as soon as I can. Like, I can't wait. I have to. And that was one thing I actually really appreciated. Also, one of the things then that happened during that week. But I had called up Pastor Weeb about on that Tuesday after this had happened, and asked him if he had some time to talk, because in my mind was, I have to get baptized as soon as possible. And so I called him up and asked him if he had some time to talk. And so, yeah, that afternoon he had some time. So I went over to his house in the afternoon on Tuesday. And I just started sharing about what happened Sunday and kind of everything that was going on, right?
And church at home.
yeah, church at home and everything that had happened. And I gave up my music and everything that was going on. And I was just now fully in debt, didn't have a job, didn't have nothing, right? And didn't have no more purpose in life, like didn't know what to do, right? Like, what am I going to do? But just sharing everything for about 2 hours. I think I was just sharing with what happened. And then at the end of it, and I was telling him just this thought that, like, I feel like I really need to get baptized as soon as possible. Like, I need to get baptized, like, as soon as I can, and I asked him, like, when can that happen? Or, we started to discuss that. And what I really appreciated from him, and I've always really respected that one thing, is the answer that he gave me right then is, he said, you know what? Let's do it Sunday.
Nice.
Sunday, like this Sunday. Like,
church will be gathered together. We got the tank there.
Yeah. No, nobody would know. Whatever. He just said, you know what? After my sermon's done, everything's finished, then I will just tell the congregation that somebody else is coming up to share what God has done, and then it's your turn. You come up and you share. So people didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, I might have told a few people might have known, but in general, like, the church or the people didn't know what was happening, and all of a sudden,
nice,
here's
surprise baptism.
Yeah, I don't think anyways that people knew what was going on, unless it spread somehow, and I didn't know, but that's Sunday. So from one Sunday, my life changed, and that Tuesday I shared with Pastor Weave that I felt like I needed to get baptized as soon as possible, and right away he's like, well, let's do it Sunday, right after the service. Let's get you in that water. And so it's what we did.
You had no trouble waking up Sunday morning to go to church
No.
that day.
I wasn't frozen in bed anymore. But I always appreciated that. And for me, I feel like that had really strengthened me in a lot of ways to be able to do that. I didn't know what to expect. I thought maybe there would be class I would need to take or anything. And the classes are great. Learning is great, right? That's why I was doing a Bible study too, is because learning was great. So any kind of learning is great, whether it's baptism classes or anything else. But just this fact of, after hearing me and discussing everything that had happened to me, and that he was willing to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I think you need to get baptized as soon as possible too. Like, why are we waiting? Why are we staying here?
Here's water. What doth hinder me from being baptized?
Yeah, let's get it done, right? And so that Sunday, I was the only one that got baptized, and
that's awesome. I sometimes I try to think about the spiritual realm. I don't spend too much time focusing on it because I don't want to delve into those things that are unseen, vainly puffed up by my fleshly mind. But I think about, God has done a work for all sinners. He sent Christ to be crucified. That work is finished. He cried, it is finished. He was raised from the dead. The work is done for people to be saved. And yet now each person individually has this battle. What are you going to do about Jesus? What do you think about his work? What do you think about what he's done? And everybody comes to it individually. But in your case, it seems very pronounced that there was clearly either your own mind and heart and flesh battling against God, or perhaps, even if we could see behind the scenes, perhaps demonic entities and powers, principalities and powers that are working against you, and how this chaos and this confusion and the sleeplessness and all that building and culminating to that one event where, almost like that rich man, you're going to leave your riches and wealth and come after me. That guy walked away, and Jesus was very sad about it.
Yeah.
In your case, he pitched the same thing to you. Leave your music, come follow me.
Yeah. And
you can have eternal life, right?
What's your choice going to be now, right?
So what's going on behind the scenes there, right?
So I think about it like you could say my conversion itself is very specific, right? It's for me anyways, like it's right. There's a clear line that I can see, but it's not that it wasn't a long process or a lot of things happening, right? Like it was a lot of stuff bringing me to this very clear thing that happened to my life though, right? And like you said, like people, like they experience things differently, like how God works in people's lives is so different, right? For me, it was that there, very specific, exactly how it happened. And I can see what happened from then on. And again, one of those things, after being a more experienced Christian after so many years and knowing a lot more, and now looking back, you see a lot of things more clearly, right? And you kind of see how God's working. And, back then I would have known some things, and slowly God is showing more and more and more. But now after many years, you look back and you're like, oh, okay, well, this is kind of how it works. Oh, this is how God works. Oh, and these are why I was struggling here. This is why this is happening. This is, through God's word, you start to piece together the picture a little bit better, right? Like why things happened the way it did, and what salvation actually meant.
For sure.
I don't know. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't know what my theology would have all been like back then. I was studying a lot, but what exactly I all knew, I have no idea.
I know for myself, it was, I didn't know that I was saved for about a month. I didn't realize what had happened, but I look back at that day when I was sitting in the truck next to a friend. We were driving in Ohio, and I was hearing a sermon about the crucifixion of Christ, and he was talking about how he was beaten to a bloody pulp, and he was marred more than any man. His face was disfigured, and he could tell all his bones, and just all this horrific things that were happening to Christ. And then he painted that picture of him on the cross, and he says, that should have been you. It was your sin that put him there. And I just there was 2 sermons I listened to that day. They just tore me apart, right? And I'm like, man, oh man, if that's the case, then my sin is gone. I don't have to deal with it anymore. And what about my brothers? What about their sin? That immediately my mind went to somebody else then, right? Like, I need to get them to know this. They need to see this. It's not just about going to church. It's not about reading your Bible. It's about what he did for us. And then about a month later, I was telling this story to people, and then I realized I got saved. The relief is there. The consciousness and the weight of sin was absolved. It was done away with, and I was free, right? It's and I couldn't have put it into words immediately. Yeah. But the relief immediately came, right? And same with you, where you were sleeping fine and you're at rest in your soul. Yeah.
And what else is interesting, after 3 months of being a Christian and not just not just studying the Bible and not just wanting it to be true, but like I'm actually, from that Sunday on, 2 or 3 months later, another epiphany happened to me, I guess you could say. So one was at 2 weeks when I realized I could sleep, like fine, like my sins didn't bother me anymore. Like not that they were any better, not that I forgot them, like they were still all there, but thinking about, well, they're forgiven. Like that part doesn't matter anymore. Like what you've done is like, it's gone. Like Christ has saved you. But 2 or 3 months later, after being a Christian from that Sunday on, I remember looking back again and thinking to myself, wow, I forget if it was 2 or 3 months, but regardless, after 3 months of being a Christian, I have done more than I have in 23 years of living. That's what I felt like. Like
done more in regards to what?
Like I had been more useful. I had been more like helpful. Like I had been able to do more that I guess you could say was of lasting value, or that was somehow beneficial in some way. Yeah. Like I had done more. This is how I felt.
Yeah.
Right. Like I felt that way. Like after 2 or 3 months, I have been able to do more than 23 years. And that's really how I felt like at that time. Like it was going through my mind. It's like, man, something's happened.
Yeah, no doubt. So ultimately, what happened to the music?
It's gone.
They never touched it again?
No, I mean...
That recording, the work you put into it?
No, it's gone, yeah. So, I mean, it was there for a while. Eventually, I tossed it. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we got still, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes if we want. And I think a lot of people who are tuning in will know you from Mexico.
Yeah.
You gained quite a reputation there, and there's quite a few viewers and listeners that tune in from Mexico. So how did you get to Mexico?
And maybe we'll have to talk Plotich. I know you're starting to practice, so maybe
I'm reading Plotich every day now.
Yeah, okay.
So trying to get there.
So...
Because you weren't very good at Plotich, apparently.
No, I was terrible. I was really, really, really bad. I definitely didn't know how to speak it well at all, and understanding I could do some. But after being a Christian, so I started framing after that. So God gave me another job, and that was clear to me too. But that's another story. Like God made me a framer. Why a framer? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter.
He didn't.
Maybe I at first I had never wanted to be a framer, and I had specifically said beforehand I wasn't going to be a framer. And then this just kind of came after, that Sunday and that following week. And it felt clear to me, God wanted me to be a framer. And even though I had before that said, no, I'm never going to be a framer. I had done other construction work, but I said I wasn't going to be a framer. And that was the specific thing that God was showing me, like just how it happens. Like it's clear I was supposed to frame houses. And maybe that's just, again, all it was, Henry, you said you wouldn't do it. What if I say yes?
Yeah. Are you really going to start doing everything I say?
Yeah. And, after that, though, then I started being excited about being a framer. Before I didn't want to, and I was like, no, I'm a framer. And then I started to get excited about the fact that I believe God actually wanted me to frame houses.
Interesting.
And then I started being excited about that. And so I framed houses. And I enjoyed it. It was a good job, actually. I did like it. But so I started framing houses, and I did that for about a year and a half. And after that time, it was just over a year and a half later that I attended Bible school in Mexico for the first time. Reason why I went there was during that previous year, I was starting to think like there was something happening inside of me again. And it's hard to explain what was going on, but it felt like something was changing again, and I didn't know what. Like something's happening. Like what is happening? And I don't know. But it felt like something is changing, and I didn't know what. Like, am I supposed to be doing something? Am I supposed to go somewhere?
Not that you felt a call to ministry already or anything like that?
No. I mean,
that's what it was.
I had the Bible study that I was always doing, right? And people would ask me sometimes maybe to share at youth things, and I would do that. So it seemed like teaching was always something that came up for me. Like ever since I became a Christian. Well, even before, I guess you could say. Yeah. It was something that always came up for me, like teaching, teach. But something was changing. I didn't know what am I supposed to do? Am I not supposed to be doing framing anymore? Am I supposed to be doing something else? Because I was clear, well, God had given me this framing job, right? And so I'm going to keep on doing this until something else comes up, because God wanted me to be a framer. And again, it doesn't matter why. Maybe he just wanted me to pay off debt, right?
Yeah.
Because of what I was doing. And that was the job that he wanted me to do. But regardless, I was clear that God had that job there for me. And so I was going to keep doing that until something else was clear to me that God wanted me to do something else. But something felt like it was different. And I couldn't explain it. An inner feeling, or was it the Holy Spirit doing something, starting to stir something? But then I had decided that, well, maybe if I go to Mexico for 3 months to a Bible school, and I knew some people that had attended there. My brothers had actually attended there before as well.
What's going on with you?
Kind of scared me, yeah. And thought, well, maybe if I go there and I would spend 3 months just earnestly seeking God, studying and praying, not messing around like a bunch of people would do, going to Bible school, whatever. It's just, a lot of people do that. They still get a lot of good there and hopefully mature. But that wasn't my intent. My intent was really, I want to study, I want to pray, and I want to earnestly spend these 3 months, and I'm going to seek God.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe after 3 months of seeking God and just doing that, maybe God would reveal to me why it is that I felt the way that I was feeling. What is going on? And if nothing came up, if it wouldn't show me, then, well, I was going to keep on framing, because that's what he had me doing. He had got me that job, and I was going to keep on doing that. Now, I wasn't expecting Mexico. I wasn't expecting to leave Canada. That would have been far from my list of anything that I wanted to do. I did not want to go to Mexico. I didn't like Mexico, to be honest. And so I was at Bible school, and the Bible school was in Plotich, but that was also, it was a big learning curve for me to figure out what was, being said in there in Plotich. But I could do my homework in English, which was good. But I didn't want to be in Mexico. I mean, everything I knew was in Canada. I'm born here. I'm raised here. Everything was English. All my friends, everything that I know was here, and not in Mexico. I didn't know anything there. But it became clear to me through...
The door opened up, and...
through a number of, I guess, things that happened again, too, that it became clear to me, Henry, you're supposed to go to Mexico. And other thing that happened was, what I was supposed to do in Mexico that God made clear to me was work at the rehab center. And I had also very specifically said that I could never work at the rehab center.
This was all during that 3 months?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember.
The rehab center I was there when I was in Mexico in February, and it's a pretty intense place. It's basically like a small jail for drunkards and drug abusers and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, and there's a variety of people that can come in there, right? And there's so much stuff even besides those kinds of things that come in there. Sometimes it's okay, there's maybe a lot of people, or people are struggling with something, or there's maybe just big troublemakers and somebody doesn't know what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do with them? Maybe the rehab center is the place to go, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty wide variety of people that can come in there for different reasons. But I had been there, I think it was my second week at Bible school with a group of people. And so I was playing guitar, right? 'Cause I knew music, and I was actually just more starting to learn acoustic guitar, because I used to be more electric and stuff. But I was doing more acoustic guitar and just help leading the singing for the group that went there. And I had a good friend there, George Froese, who had been working at the rehab center as well, and he was leading the group. He was also attending the Bible school. And so we were a group there from the Bible school, and I remember just being in the rehab center and just helping with the singing and playing guitar. And George was leading it all. And I remember thinking to myself, man, George is so good with these guys. This place needs a guy like him. He's so good with these people, and he's meant for stuff like this. This is him all the way.
He was pretty good at German probably too.
Yeah, he would have developed that over a couple of years that he was there. And so he's really good with these guys. Just the way, he was, I felt like he interacted with people and, talking. And I just thought, man, he's meant for this place. And I remember thinking to myself during that time when I'm just sitting in the room, I would never be able to be here. No way. I can't be here.
You got to stop saying things.
I know. This is kind of the story of my life, I feel like. I said, I'd never be able to be in a place like this. No way. And that was my impression leaving there. And that was then the specific place that I didn't believe God was calling to me later on. And man, I struggled with that thought. Struggled with that a lot. When it came up, and maybe another point to put in there, actually, when I was at Bible school, there was an evening, it's probably after about 1 month or so, and I had been up studying till late, like 1 or 2 in the morning, studying and working on an essay maybe or something. And I remember thinking, after finishing whatever I was doing that evening or that night, and just thinking about, man, I just desired to be exactly where God wanted me to go. Like, I just wanted to do what God would say, and I would do it. Like, what if He would say something, boom, I would do it, right? Like, that was my desire, and I made a decision there again, and I wrote something in my Bible, in the back of my Bible, on the white pages. I was reminded of something that I forget what his name is, but somebody at a men's camp here once had said that he believed white pages at the back of books were for writing in. And at the back of his Bible, he would write important dates and maybe important things that happened or decisions he made. And that came to my mind that night, in the middle of the night, when I was just thinking about, I wanted to do what God wanted me to do and whatever He would say. And so I opened my Bible and I turned to those white pages and I wrote down the date. And I still have that Bible, and I still have it. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I wonder if it's January 31st. Something like that.
Sounds right, because Bible school is the first 3 months of the year, right?
Yeah. But anyways, the date is still on there. I wrote down the date, and then I wrote down this. On this day, I made a covenant with God. Oh boy. Yeah. On this day, I made a covenant with God. Now listen, that He could have my body, whether in life or in death. That's what I wrote.
Whoa.
And I prayed about it. I closed my Bible and I went to bed. That's what I wrote. It's still in my Bible. And I forgot about it for a couple of days. A couple of days later, I remember walking back to the dorm rooms from a class, and I was just outside of the dorm, and suddenly it hit me. I remembered what I wrote in my Bible a couple of nights before. God could have my body, whether in life or in death.
That means you're willing to do whatever.
I started getting scared. Man, I was scared. I was thinking about, in life or in death? Henry, what have you done? What did you write? What did you do? Like, I was, like, inside, I was freaking out. What did I do? What is going to happen? Like, what do I do now? Like, what is God going to do to me? Like, you start thinking about who knows what. What's God all going to do to me now? And I was thinking about, I was thinking about ripping that page out of my Bible, right? And maybe throwing it away, or maybe I would burn it. Like, this was all going through my mind. Like, get rid of it, throw it away. Like,
I promised too much.
Like, this was because I was thinking about the seriousness of what I wrote and prayed about. And after, I don't know how long of a struggle to myself there, wondering why I did it and being scared. Finally, I spent some more time in prayer to God, and I thought to myself, isn't this what it means to be a Christian anyway?
Exactly, right?
That's what came to my mind then. Isn't that...
Your life is not your own. You're bought with a price.
If I'm saying that I'm a Christian, am I not saying that, whatever God says, like, I want to follow Him, You know, if God, the same thing, I guess, with, you know, me giving up my music. You know, I did that just specifically because I believe God was calling me to do that, to let that go, right? And that changed my life. Like that was, you know, from darkness to light kind of. So that was a good decision. You know, God was helping me get rid of something that was hindering me from being able to take that step. But I was thinking about, isn't this what it means to be a Christian? And I thought about that, and I remember, and then I prayed to God again, and I said, and I was still scared. I said, God, you know I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what, you know, what's my life's going to bring. You know what's going on. But I want this to be true. I want this to be true, that if you say something, that I want to go.
Yeah.
And that was difficult. I mean, and I was uneasy feeling, right? And, you know, thinking about it, you know, really, God, if God would say something, that was my idea. Like that night that I made this decision, this covenant with God, if he would show me something, I would pack up and go. I would give up all of my ideas and everything that I thought I needed, and I would go and do that. You know, forget my ideas. And that was, I think, a couple of weeks before this whole thing with the rehab came up. And how that actually happened was, had been somebody who was actually working at the rehab center, was also taking some classes there. It was Han Friesen. Maybe you know him.
I know the name.
Han Friesen, and counselor. And he was taking classes there, and so we had met a little bit here and there in some classes. One day I was walking on my way to class, and he started walking with me. And I remember we were walking there and talking about stuff, and then we got into the gym on our way to the class. And then I remember all of a sudden he blurted out, "You should think about working at the rehab center." Right? And he started thinking, and everything kind of paused right there. I think we just stood there for a bit. And then I don't know what he all said after that, but it was almost like my whole world paused for a moment. And I was in who knows how many thoughts. Like there's a lot of stuff happening in here the moment that came up. And I started thinking about, well, first of all, okay, no, I don't like Mexico. Okay, no. A rehab center, I can't work there.
George is much better at it.
Yeah, George is the guy for something like that. So wrong country, wrong place. I'm not even good at Plotich. And I started thinking about all the good things that there were to do in Canada, right? There was a lot of good things that I could do in Canada. Maybe I could help with some youth in Canada. Or I could do some other good things here. You know, things that other people later on told me, hey, why don't you stay in Canada and do this stuff? That's what I would have liked to do. Like this was the battle in my mind. Like that's what I wanted. I wanted to stay. I don't know anything in Mexico. I don't know anybody in Mexico. Everything I knew was here, and this was my battle in my mind. You know, all the things that people were telling me, no, you can stay in Canada and do all these things. And I know, I hope God would do that. But this was now in my mind, right? And I was battling this here. And suddenly, while I'm thinking about a lot of stuff, and I don't know what Han Friesen, you know, saw while I'm thinking in my mind. I don't know what I looked like. But it seemed like a long conversation in my head with myself. But after thinking about so many things and how it was all wrong, it was all the wrong place and the wrong work and the wrong, you know, the language, the wrong everything for me, and me wanting to be in Canada, and you know, that's where that's what I know, that's my family, that's my friends, and after all of that, you know what popped into my mind then at that moment? What I wrote in my Bible. I was
going to say the white pages in your Bible?
What I wrote in my Bible a couple of weeks before that. And then to me it felt like God's nudging, Henry, you said that if I would show you something, if I would need you somewhere, you know, if there was something, you would forget about all your good ideas and you would go. Man, that was a tough pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm. But that was basically what drew you to Mexico.
Yeah.
Because you stayed there to work then?
Yeah.
You never actually came back full time to Canada.
No, not full time anymore. No. And so thinking there, and I remember at that moment in that conversation in the gym right there, in the middle of that discussion, in my head, I already knew I'm staying in Mexico instantly. Now, I know Hen Friesen had at that time, and I remember him saying, maybe not right away, maybe you don't have to do this, maybe you go home for a while, pray about it for a while or something, and maybe in the future. But I knew instantly it wasn't a matter of praying about it anymore. It wasn't a matter of any more discussions, really. It wasn't a matter of any more seeking. I had been seeking. I had been praying for a long time. I knew something was changing. I knew something was different, and I didn't know what. I was hoping for Canada. I was assuming Canada. I was never expecting anything like that. It wasn't a matter of praying about it anymore.
Interesting.
I knew right then and there. It was just a matter of, will I do it or won't I? That was it. Will I or won't I? And right there, I had already made up my mind in my heart. Staying.
There you go.
And later on, during Bible school yet too, I ended up going to the rehab center again, and then I guess introducing myself a little bit to people and talking about, the idea of me coming to work there. And after Bible school, I would first go home for 2 months, and then pack up my things maybe and go to work. And I remember too, while I was talking to the director at that time, about me coming to work there, and he said too, he's like, yeah, you can come and you can try it and see how it'll work out and everything, and and maybe you won't want to work here, whatever. And I just remember thinking to myself when he mentioned that, it's a good thought, but it didn't matter whether I liked it. It didn't matter what I felt. It didn't matter any of those things. Like, to me, it didn't matter at all. The Apostle
Paul said, "Woe unto me if I preach not the gospel."
Yeah.
Like, this is what God has showed me to do, right?
Yeah. At that time, like in my mind, as still a fairly new believer, like 2 years that I was a Christian at that point. But I knew, no, it's not a matter of me wanting this or wanting something else. Doesn't matter. I know God wants me here, and so I'm going. I'm coming from over there. I'm coming. Right? I'm going to go to Canada. I'm packing up my stuff, and I'm coming back to Mexico, and that's what I'm doing.
We'll see how long I last.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so that was rehab center. Right now, I didn't know if it would end up 14 years. I didn't know that everything else that would come after, right? And
you went to the radio station eventually, and then you got involved with the Bible school eventually. Yeah. How many years did you do school there?
Going through school?
Yeah.
The 4 years. So it's always 3 months.
Okay.
So it was 4 years, and then I graduated.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was 2010 is the first year that I did that. So 2010, 11, 12, and then 13, beginning of 2013 was my final year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I became youth pastor and also started working at the radio station at that time. And then things developed. Eventually I started teaching classes at the Bible school, and then also becoming pastor of the church.
It all just kind of happened over the next few years there.
Yeah.
You said you were pastor for the last 7 or 8 years?
6.5 years that I would have been pastor at the church there. Yeah. And so I guess a lot of things that kind of have led up to that. But yeah, a lot of those things. And pastor was also one of those things that before we got married, then my wife now, Margaret, before then, she asked me if I thought I would be a pastor one day, and I said no. And now I was working in ministry, right? I had been working in ministry for a number of years, different kinds of ministry, right?
So it should have been an option for you.
Youth work, and I'd preached often at different places here and there, but I never saw myself as a pastor, like a pastor of a church anywhere. I knew I was doing ministry, but I didn't think of myself as a pastor. And I became a pastor a year after we got married. But again, one of those things that I thought, no, I'm never going to be a pastor. And then again, it was something that, and I was a pastor. And
so what do you think right now that you're never going to do in the future? That's probably where God's leading you next.
I don't know. But
How about we spend the last few minutes talking a little bit, because we could talk about your whole time of ministry and some of the struggles that developed there. But I know right now you're beginning something here, ministry-wise, and I think it'd be good to kind of publicize that a little bit too.
Well, I guess earlier in our talk, I did mention one thing that seems to have always come up in my Christian life, even before I was a Christian, was teaching. Like before I was even a Christian, but I was searching. I taught a Bible study, right? I was every single week coming up with something to discuss. Like, now we're going to study this topic or this text or something. So that was always coming up. And I would always find that I was like just constantly asked, hey, can you share a devotion here? Can you share the message here with the youth? Can you bring a message here? Or like last minute stuff, even in Mexico, was always constantly like, hey, we need somebody to bring a message or somebody to share. And I would always just say yes, like whether or not it was, tomorrow morning and I haven't thought of it, but I would always just say yes. God always gave me something before, so he's going to give me something now too, I always thought. But that made things busy. So teaching seems to be something that I've always been involved in. And so I guess Bible study or Bible school, as well, was
taught at the Bible school.
More classes, right? 2-hour sessions there, and then specifically teaching through books of the Bible. And that was something that always interested me a lot more as well, like specific teaching through books of the Bible. And so I guess it seems as though the teaching aspect has always been one thing that's been more on my heart to do, like teaching. And, I did morning devotions for a couple of years, in Low German videos and WhatsApp things as well.
Are those still floating around?
Through books of the Bible. And yeah, they're online as well on the church and WhatsApps, and even on, what's that other message? Telegram. There's groups there. So I did those, but it's always teaching style. And it seemed like I was always drawn to teaching things, and that was something that I felt was maybe more my strength, was teaching. And maybe also why I never really, I was a pastor for 6.5 years, and I believe I was supposed to be a pastor. I believe God called me there for a time. I think I made the right decision. I think I had to stay. Again, it was a hard thing, like how we came in there, like the different things that happened that brought me to being a pastor. It was just kind of bam, now you're here, right? But I forget where was I? Teaching. Oh yeah, so I believe there was a pastor, right? I was supposed to be a pastor, but I still never felt like a pastor. I always, I guess in a way, feel more like a teacher, right? And so I would always...
In the book of Ephesians, the gifts that are given there, pastor and teacher, goes into one little clause.
Pastor, so teacher.
I think
and elders and pastors, like, you obviously have to teach, right? And that's the one clause, like, to be an elder, you have to be able to teach the Bible. Because that's obviously one thing that you have to be able to do. You can't lead people in the scriptures if you don't know the scriptures, right? And you can't explain the scriptures to somebody. I guess maybe the one aspect where I always felt where I was not as strong in, or maybe it's just who I am, where I was never drawn as much to was the caretaking part. Like, I would always spend a lot of time teaching, and I would always make myself overly busy in teaching, like things that I didn't have to do, but hey, here's another thing that needs to be taught. And so make classes again, right? Or Bible school, for example, right? And hey, make another course for Bible school and teach another one, right? Like, I would always do those, or, morning devotions. Nobody made me do those things. It's just, I would always be drawn to that. It seemed like that was something inside of me more, that like, teach the Bible, just teach the scriptures, teach what this book says, study this, teach this, tell people, explain it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like a lot of the caretaking, when you think of pastors, right, and you think of elders in the caretaking part of the church as well, right, and the counseling and all of the stuff that comes. I mean, it's so broad, right? There's so much. I was never as drawn to those things, and because of that, maybe not as good, right? And so those kinds of things would maybe fall behind a lot more. But the teaching was always something that, didn't matter how busy I was, I would keep on teaching and teaching and teaching, often to the detriment maybe of personal life and family and different things. I would keep myself so busy doing those things. But that seems like one thing that's always, I guess, kind of been, I've been drawn to.
You spend a few weeks not teaching and you're like, I need to go. I need to share.
And so that's something that I'm starting to develop here again a little bit more. Now is
you're going
maybe
to be going through
some
the
teaching.
book of Philippians.
Yeah, so now I'm going to be doing a small group going through Philippians and doing it more of a class style, right? 2 hours every evening for about 9 weeks or so. And so we're going to be a small group. I think it's going to be really good. And so a short book, but Philippians for me has been, I think, probably the most personally impactful book for me, I would say. Not theology-wise. Theology-wise, probably Hebrews would have done it more for me, like really piecing together Old Testament and New Testament and Jesus and
the accomplishment of the cross.
Yeah, putting everything together. And Hebrews has kind of given me, I guess, better eyes to look at everything, right? And after really going in depth through Hebrews, I've been able to theologically look at a lot of things more clearly, right? So not in that sense has Philippians been the most impactful for me, but I just think about the most impactful personally for how to live or how to think. Or I just remember the first time studying it in depth, at our church and just putting all of the pieces together about Paul's life and his experiences and everything about Philippi and everything about what he says and everything going on. And it just seemed it's had the most impact on me on how to think about a lot of stuff. And, about peace and joy and contentment and so much stuff. And as I was thinking about, maybe teaching here again and doing some classes, I thought about Philippians again, which is what I'm doing now. But I was reading through my notes again. And as I was reading through my notes, I started thinking about, man, there's so much here. This is so good. I need this again. Like, that's what it felt like to me. Like, there's so much in here in my notes that I have and in my lessons and in the things that I've learned over the years through Philippians and the impact it had on my thinking, and just thinking to myself again, well, I need this again. And so I'm bringing the class maybe more for myself than everybody else. It's just, for me, it's just had such a big impact and in the past. I think it needs to get rooted in there again.
Is there still openings for people to join?
Yeah, there would still be room for a few people. So we're just a small group.
How many are you planning or hoping for? Kind of.
Well, there would be room for 28 people. 28. And so I'm not sure exactly how many people are going to be coming. There's some that aren't confirmed yet, but it might be between 15 to 20 people so far, somewhere around there. So there'd be room for. So
if they want to find you and find that, Facebook is probably the simplest option.
Yeah, Facebook would be able to find me. Yeah, Facebook. And
will you be recording those sessions, or is it just going to be?
No, it's just going to be a private in-class thing. I know there have been a few people actually that have asked me this as well. Like, they really wanted to take part if I would have it online or something. But no, this is just going to be me personally with a small group of people. And
cool whiteboard and drawing stuff and
that's how I like it. Having
I was talking to Mike Cron this morning. He says he'll bring his whiteboard up there and he'll start drawing on things. And
that's what I like. And PowerPoint with some simple things, use some apps. And
nice.
So that's kind of how I like to do things. Everybody has their own way of teaching and different things, right? And I've kind of, over the years of teaching in very many different contexts, kind of learned, I guess, how I teach, right? Every person has to learn themselves what kind of teacher they are, right? I've tried.
You can't try to be someone else, that's for sure.
You do that initially, right? When you teach or whatever it is that you're doing, you'll do that like somebody else, or maybe like people that have taught you, because that's what you know, right? And so you're developing your own things with what other people have given you.
Yeah.
But then in time and in a lot of experience, you start to see, okay, well, I was actually a little bit better at doing it here, and this isn't really my thing, and that person's great at doing it that way, but I'm terrible. Like, that's not how I do it. And then you see, okay, this is more my thing, and nobody else does it this way, but I feel stronger here.
Yeah.
And so you really learn that after many years of teaching.
So 9 weeks, 18 hours of really in-depth looking through the book of Philippians, walking through all the details, tying it back to Acts and Paul's life and things like that.
Yeah, there's going to be history lessons in there, right? And a lot of context in there. And so,
nice.
Yeah, today I was studying through some more things, trying to prepare for my first lesson. There's a lot of stuff to get everything going again. Classes don't make themselves, apparently. Yeah. It's a lot of work, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to going through it again. And like I say, even just for myself, really look forward to going through it myself again. I feel like it's needed for me again. So everybody else, that's good for them too. But I look forward to seeing what I'm going to get again.
For sure. Well, I think we've probably gone on long enough for today, but it's a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, it was good being here.
Yeah.
Next time, maybe we'll talk about some other stuff.
Yeah, there's so many things. Like I've always had a drive and a passion to, especially the last few years, to see Mennonite people not necessarily leave Mennonitism, but to come to true faith and peace and joy in Christ and at the cross, right? The whole channel is called In Light of the Gospel, right?
Yeah.
To live in light of that, not in trying to please God, but to rest in what he's done and then to work and to serve. And so I appreciate your passion for that too. It was the Ervakyunk Kyoik, right?
Ervakyunk Kyoik.
That's how you would find it on YouTube.
Yeah, that would be on YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, they're there. Yeah.
Right on. Thanks, Henry.
Yeah.